Welcome to Lecture 6 Part 2 on Management Practices in Agronomy. This is part of the agronomy subject offered in the agricultural degree at North Melbourne Institute of TAFE, an education institution based in Australia. For more information on this subject and our other educational products, please visit our website at www.nmit.edu.au. My name is Dr. Nikki Cooley. In Part 1 on this topic, we looked at an overview and introduction of agronomy management techniques. We looked at the timetables, the practices and philosophies, and such concepts as crop rotation, nutritional, water and soil, sustainable management, irrigation and tilling. In Part 2, this lecture, we will look at cropping management in more detail. Please note that there are other lectures including information on pasture management and pasture renovation, grazing and fodder conversion. You will need to watch all of these lectures to complete your notes on this area. We will start our journey on cropping management by introducing the local areas. This will be based on the state of Victoria in Australia, and we will look at the agronomical regions and some of their characteristics, like their climate and their soil types. Victoria is separated into 9 regions, and today we're going to talk about the Mallee, Wimmera and Southwest regions. The Mallee region is in the northwest of Victoria and tends to be associated with warm, dry summers. It typically has a rainfall between 200 and 400 millimetres a year. Most of the soils there are alkaline. The average farm size is approximately 1,400 acres, and there is a lot of irrigated farm. The average farm size for irrigation is 25 hectares. There are 3 areas that predominate this region: irrigated horticulture and viticulture, which are high-end crops that run along the Murray. This also includes such crops as almonds, stone fruit, citrus, potatoes, carrots, table grapes and dried fruit. There is also some irrigated dairy. The second area is dryland agriculture, and this includes cropping such as wheat, barley, vetch, oats, pulses and canola, and this tends to be done in the winter months. And the third industry are sheep that are dominant livestock industry. Based on the commodities value in 2006-2007, the largest value crop is grapes, worth 270 million in this area. This is followed by wheat grain, worth 109 million, then almonds at 73 million, and milk at 65. Other crops that are present are peaches, nectarine, sheep and lambs, oranges, barley for grain, pastures and grasses, and cattle and calves. Now let us move on to the Wimmera. This is the mid-east region of Victoria. Its rainfall is more than the Mallee at between 350 and 550 millimetres. The average size farm is 880 hectares. It is predominantly broad acre cropping with wheat and barley, and there is some livestock, predominantly sheep. Wheat production is mostly in the Australian premium. The Australian premium white, flatbreads and for the noodle market. In this area, based on the commodities of 06-07, sheep and lambs are the highest earning industry. These are worth about 133 million. This is then followed by wool, worth 81 million, and barley and wheat, worth 65 and 50 million. Cattle and calves, cut flowers, pigs, vegetables, canola and fruit are also found in this area. The last area we're going to look at is Southwest Victoria. This has significantly more rainfall than the other areas, averaging between 600 and 1,600 a year. Predominantly milk, beef, sheep and seafood are all the agricultural industries. Cereal and oil crops are increasing. The value of commodities shows that milk is the highest profit earner for this region at 680 million. This is followed by calf and cattle's, worth 377 million, closely by sheep and lamb, worth 307. You will also find such industries as wool, pasture grasses, poultry, barley, wheat and cut flowers grown in this area. One of the most important crops to Australia is wheat. It is also important to Victoria. Triticarium avicitum, or bread wheat, is a hexaploid species. Triticarium durium is the only tetraploid form of modern wheat. The following map gives an overview of where wheat is produced in Victoria. Wheat is an important crop not only to Australia but to the world, and also generates a reasonable income for Victorian farmers. There is a great amount of aspects to consider when selecting varieties for wheat. There are a number of guides that are an excellent resource, including the DPI Victoria, which is an overall guide to the various wheats grown in Victoria. There is also a summary table, noted Table 3, which is worth a look at too. You can find these resources on DPI on the Moodle website. It may be worth considering other DPI regions for a resource, such as DPI Queensland produce a wheat variety guide. Other resources that are worth looking at when you're choosing your wheat variety are the Wheat Variety Disease Rating. DPI Victoria has produced a guide. This is also available on Moodle. DPI have produced a wheat agronomical guide, which is specifically for growing wheat in the Victoria regions. Table 2 is a summary of this guide and makes a great quick reference. Wheat is classified by the AWB, and there are a number of grades. Prime hard wheat is one such grade. It contains a minimal protein of 13 to 14%, and it is used for the Chinese and Japanese noodles. It is also used for high volume breads, and the map on the slide shows in yellow where it's grown. You will notice that not much of prime hard wheat is grown in Victoria. Mostly it's in Queensland and New South Wales. A slightly lower grade is hard grain. This has a minimal protein in 11.5%. It is used for the European pan and hearth breads, Middle East flatbreads and Chinese steamed products market. The AWB standard white wheat is a grade that has medium to low protein. It is a multi-purpose wheat which is used for the Indian and Middle East flatbreads and the Chinese steamed bread markets. And again, the map on the slide in yellow illustrates the area where this is grown. This is grown in New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and WA. The Australian General Purpose Wheat and Feed Wheat grade is often referred to as GP1. It fails to meet the higher gradings. The Australian feed wheat is high in protein and rich in gluten, which also helps binding in the pellet production process. Now let us move on to a second important crop in Victoria, and that is barley, also known in Latin as Hordeum vulgaria. There are two main grades of barley, malting and feed. Malting is characterized as 1, 2 and 3, while feed is characterized as 1 and 2. The characteristics which make malting barley are a maximum moisture of 12.5% in the grain at harvest, protein minimum of 9% and a protein maximum of 12%. It has a test weight minimum of 65 kilograms per hectare. DPI Victoria have produced a barley winter crop summary for 2011, which is available on their website. This gives a lot of information about barley varieties and its suitability for certain climates and soil types. Traditional oats, Avi Savita, is a hexaploid and a commonly grown crop in Victoria. It is used for grazing, silage, hay and grain. Sire oats is also grown in Victoria. This is a black small seed. The more common cropping systems used in Victoria and Australia are shown on the slide, and they include traditional, also called conventional, direct drill, no-till, beds and pasture cropping. There is a small industry of hydroponic cropping and glasshouse controlled conditions cropping. There is much evidence to show that farmers that are able to diversify are commercially more successful and are able to cope when times are tough. One part of this is enterprise mixing. This is where you bring a number of enterprises together on your farm. In order to do this successfully, there are a number of things that you need to consider. Firstly, and most importantly, make your enterprises synergistic. If you are able to do this, it lowers the risk of price fluctuations, it spreads seasonal risk, and lowers critical risk. We will talk about critical risk in the next slide. There is a lower cost up front input. It is more flexible. All of these enable you to increase in resilience, marketing, product options, and opportunities for your business to grow. Farming carries risk, and there are a number of levels of risk. Critical risk is perhaps the most extreme. Some examples of critical risk factors for cropping include frost, drought, hailstone, late rain, and extreme unseasonable heat. It is very difficult to manage for these extreme scenarios. This brings us to the end of this lecture on agronomy cropping management. So to summarise, we learned a little bit about Victorian cropping, the areas where Victorian cropping occurs, and the most common industries and their values. We considered some common enterprises and quality components of the crops wheat, barley and oats. We overviewed information and resources and where we can obtain this information for these varieties. And finally, we gave an overview of the cereal management. Concepts such as enterprise mix, critical risk, and basic management criteria like conventional versus no-till versus drill. This brings us to the end of this lecture.